All right. Hey. We're back. And welcome, dear listeners, to another enchanting episode of Voces Mysticae, where the veils between worlds grow thin and the whispers of ancient wisdom beckon us forth. In this haven of mystical exploration, we delve deep into the mysteries that shape our understandings of sovereignty and sorcery, a realm where power intertwines with the arcane and the essence of the soul dances with the energies of the universe. Today, we invite you to journey with us as we unravel the profound threads that connect autonomy, or sovereignty, to the craft of sorcery, guided by our esteemed guest, Adam Darkley of the Devil's Conjure. I'm really excited about this episode. It's going to be a fun time. Adam is a sorcerer for hire whose insights promise to illuminate our path as we explore sovereignty and sorcery today. So prepare to embrace the extraordinary, for the knowledge that we seek is often cloaked in mystical shadows of the uncharted realms of the cosmos. As always, I'm your master of ceremonies, Frater O.D, the magician, and the once and future fool. So, Adam, welcome. I'm glad to have you on today. And I'd like to start out just by introducing you and having you kind of talk a little bit about yourself. Who are you? How did you get into this racket?
hmm Sure. So, thanks for having me on. As you mentioned, I'm Adam Darkley. I have always been into the strange, macabre, unusual, and occult, even if I didn't understand what that meant or have really any context around it. But yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a sorcerer for hire. Through my business, Devil's Conjure, I work with clients all over the world in various
Mm-hmm.
capacities. And obviously, I open and operate Devil's Conjure with my husband, Darian Darkley, and we offer some really wicked products and stuff through our site. So yeah, I guess there's a whole lot that one could know about me, such as like I grew up in Tennessee and experienced, in the Appalachians, in the foothills of the Appalachians in Tennessee and around there, experienced all kinds of weird miracles and stuff I could never explain
Mm.
that from an early age kind of led me on to seek answers about what basically to explain, my experiences and things that from a having grown up, one family Southern Baptist and the other family like on the other side of the family like Catholic and Methodist. Those are really the only lenses that I ever kind of was able to perceive the world. So I kind of had to find new ways to kind of glimpse into the beyond and understand, what I had, you know been through or whatever. And that kind of, as I said, led me on. Uh, you know, uh, Basically, I've always been interested in things, but since I lived in such like a sheltered family, uh, I even tried like around 12, 13. I remember getting in trouble for Googling Wicca, and it came up on like our computer like history, and my dad like scolded me, and he was like an evangelist and stuff, and so he was or evangelical, so he was like really against it. And around that time, I was also getting into like Buddhism and other things. So I kind of taught myself or was able to learn like meditation and it wasn't
Mm.
until probably about 17, 18 when I actually started, digging even deeper and began working. Began learning more about like basically like shamanic work, like entheogens, trance states, energy work, like energy manipulation, and then that kind of spurred me on to hoodoo uh, and uh, and working with like plants and plant medicines and then on and on. So my husband Darian, you know, he's one of my biggest mentors. So he has a whole kind of history, colorful history of his own experiences and things, and so he's been like a great mentor and taught me a lot. And so a big part of the reason that I'm kind of where I'm at now and working how I am kind of comes from him essentially, because
Mm.
at the time when I was just kind of reading and trying to make sense when I was like 17, 18, I was reading about shamanism and different traditions and paths. He was able to kind of guide me and give context and kind of steer me in some good directions. So
Hmm.
yeah, and it just, things have kind of, one thing led to another, and uh, now I'm doing the devil's work. So
It's funny how our story weaves and meanders through all of these different facets to create who we become today, right?
hmm
And uh, I love that. It's a beautiful tale.
yeah.
Specifically, I want to kind of dive back into this. So I grew up in Hot Springs, Arkansas, so not too far, from Tennessee, and
hmm
there is something different and magical about the woodlands in
hmm
that area of the country. There's, growing up, I'm so blessed to have been able to grow up within nature that way. Like in Arkansas, especially, there's nothing there but woods. The whole state's
hmm
just a big patch of woods and lakes.
yeah.
And growing up, being able to be that attached to nature, to be so immersed heavily,
mm
running through woods, picking up ticks, doing all that kind of stuff that's not necessarily always um, available to children now. I just feel blessed because that I think that did form a connection, like you said. You see my spirit lamp going nuts back there.
yeah, I saw that.
It's so weird. I don't know why it does that. I really don't. It just whenever something's on, it seems to fire. Like there's got to be an electrical component that's wrong with it, but I've done too much magic in this room for it to not be attached to spirit in some way.
Sure. Yeah, I get that.
But it's yeah, there's something about the woods in shaping our experience because,
hmm
like you said, we're told from our mentors, from our peers, our parents, this is what the world looks like. This is how the world operates,
hmm
and to a certain degree, that forms the picture that we're going to work with for the rest of
hmm
our lives. You talked about your evangelical Southern Baptist. I went to a Southern Baptist school, went to an evangelical church, very much shaped how I'm viewing these things, these
hmm
experiences that I'm having. And, you know, it's, that can stay with us for the rest of our life if we choose to allow it. Or we can start forming our own picture, which it sounds very much like you have done. You
Yeah, totally.
deconstructed somewhat from those methods, and now
hmm
you've formed your own picture of what it means to be Adam Darkley. And I think, given the context of what our conversation is today with sovereignty, autonomy, figuring out who we are and how we want to operate within this world, it's vital to know where we come from. I think it's
hmm
absolutely vital to understand where is it that we've been coming from. What is the
hmm
story that's led us to this point? And that's
Yeah.
why I had to ask you. I was like, what brought you to become Adam Darkley?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. It was a lot of crazy experiences, uh, like basically a number of near death things, even when I was a kid, like around the same, like a few years that, uh, not only am I lucky to be alive, but like I'm lucky to kind of have my sanity because of some of the just wild stuff that it had magical connotations there. But like when I was 3, it was like a number of months apart, but I drowned in 2 different bodies of water, once in a pool and once in a lake. And once I had fallen in my grandma's pool, and another time somebody accidentally, I was like 3, so I was small. I guess they accidentally like bumped me when they were like running, chasing after each other, and they didn't realize. And my mom was like somewhere doing something. When she was like, "Where the hell is he at?" She looks and I'm like floating in the water upside down.
Oh dear.
They were able to resuscitate me both times, but like I was gone for who knows how long, like both times. I mean, I've had stuff like that all my life that I was just like, I don't even know how I walked away from it, but it has like left an impact on me as far as like my connections between the worlds, like with the dead and stuff. Like it's weird, but like I don't know, there's like it's like those things, even though they were traumatizing, they kind of got me to where I am today. Like once more, talking about our
Mm,
origins, it's like these things where it's literally like facing death, and like and kind of overcoming it. I think,
mm.
and I mean, I've even had dreams of like death or like spirits, or like almost like Santisma Muerte or other powers that come to me in my dreams and stuff too. So it's weird.
I wonder. Yeah, those traumatic events, they tend to breach the veil for us in
hmm
some cases, right? And any of us that have had those near death experiences, I think we're
Yeah.
bound to come back with not necessarily information, but a deeper connection to
Mm,
that, right? If there's something about that experience that fires something within us, whether it's at a brain level or if it's at a
mm,
soul level or a spiritual level, neither here nor there. It's evident that it
yeah.
happens when we have these events of massive trauma. It connects us in some way. It lights something up with us, and wow, that's powerful stuff. I
Hmm.
like I like diving into the things that we want to resist, right? That our traumas. We don't want them to
Hmm.
be a part of our story because we want our story to be something else. They inform so much of that picture, right? And
Yeah,
it's
it's
awesome
true.
to know that through those points of pain that we find our own power.
Hmm.
I think more often than not, my own traumas have greatly and deeply informed my own experience, not only with spirituality and life, but with magic as well. Being someone in recovery, having to go through the hells that someone is when they're in the grips of addiction, it it 100% molded me into who I am
Mm,
today. And so in these ways, I'm thankful for the suffering that I self inflicted. But,
yeah.
you know, but it definitely has shaped me in who I am today and given me a sense of sovereignty, right?
Hmm.
I have come to an understanding with what my story is. I have come to accept it, be grateful for it, and I think in doing so, there's a ton of power that you unlock
Hmm.
with doing that instead of just resisting, what is available to us. So awesome, awesome. I think we're already bridging into the topic, and
Yeah.
so let's get into what we're here to really talk about. I want to talk about. Well, you brought the topic to me, really, and so it must be something that's on your mind lately, something that you're working with
Hmm.
dearly. What does sovereignty mean to you in the context
Sure.
of your sorcery or just in general?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it means multiple things. Whenever I think of sovereignty or a sovereign, I think of kind of like a kind, loving ruler who rules with, honorably and with compassion and things like that. But also someone who, in essence, like lifts others up around them. Like they, what it's like once they kind of get their shit together, or they have the tools or means or resources, they kind of help that, in essence, like in my work, like some of the tools and things as far as magic goes, I've been that have helped me kind of, get to where I am today. I'm feel very blessed to be able to share that and share that same magical tool set with my clients. And so, and I feel like in essence that's kind of part of the role that I play, is like, what's worked for me, I can then say, now you take this and do great things with it. Yeah, I think sovereignty is many things, as I said. I think I think a big part of that is having, knowing that we have this responsibility, like as far as like magic
Mm-hmm.
is in terms of magic as sorcerers, we have this great power, and you can do, you can create, horrible things, like the squares, the kamias in the sacred book of Abramelin, like where you can siege castles and destroy kingdoms, or you can do, so it's like, we know we have the understanding and wisdom that, we can do great terrible things, but that we can do great things. And I think we have a responsibility. That's why people will say magic isn't political or whatever. It's like, even with politics, we know what's right and what's wrong. And I think, if we don't utilize our power to impact the world around us positively, the magic we do for ourselves, for money or love, that's not going to matter if the world you're living in is on fire, literally, because of
Mm.
whatever horrible thing. And so I think sovereignty is taking up our power and taking up our responsibility to be a part of creating a better world, and then helping empower other people to do that, or to liberate themselves, or whatever. So it's many things, but I think
Mm.
that's in some way like an encapsulation of kind of how I perceive it in some ways.
it's always a chore to answer such a broadband question. It's like, what does this, huge concept mean to you? And
Hmm.
so, but you very eloquently put it. To me, what comes to mind is, like you said, the benevolent ruler archetype in general. Your King Arthur's, your Osiris.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know if Dionysus necessarily fits there, unless you're kind of a
Hmm.
mad conqueror in some cases
Yeah.
there, but eventually learns a lesson about what rulership
Hmm.
really means. But there's a
Yeah.
journey, right? That archetype has to go on. In order to be king, you first have to be a hero,
Hmm.
and a hero has to find their own sense of sovereignty too, right? And in
Hmm.
our world, and this is a topic that I talk about ad nauseum with people, is are you choosing to do something about your situation, your circumstances, the
Hmm.
happenings that are occurring in your life, or are you going to reside in a victim mentality,
Hmm.
you know, till the end? And
Yeah.
many of us, we choose to do so. We choose to do so because we don't know a better
Hmm.
way. We just simply don't know a better way, and it's no fault of our own. It's just we either haven't been taught or someone hasn't turned on the lights for us, like you said.
Yeah.
And that is the work of those who have gone from victim to hero. And for me, hero is like that's you doing your personal work,
Hmm.
right? That's you learning the things. It's the very first few years of you exploring all of this wide world that you get opened up to. And then once you found a foundation there, then it's time to start giving back, right? Before
Hmm.
enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Hmm.
After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. We've got a responsibility to bring this wisdom and
Hmm.
information that we've acquired back to other people to help them in some way.
Hmm.
Uh, Not to force it down their throats, right? We're not evangelists
Right. Yeah.
necessarily,
Exactly.
but those who are wanting to come to this world of open eyes and open hearts, I think it's important for us to do that work, and that fits with that sovereign ruler, right?
Hmm.
I'm doing this not for me, but for the greater good.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
I resonate with that deeply, and that's one of the reasons
Hmm.
I've set out to come out of the shadows in the occult
Yeah.
world and do what I'm doing now in this podcast and reaching out to people like you and talking more about these things. Sovereignty. Where do we go with this? There's so much. There's more to unpack there before we tackle
Hmm.
sorcery. I think you mentioned um, what are you going to do if the world around you is burning, and
Hmm.
it is a difficult thing for people to talk about. We don't have conversations anymore.
Hmm.
Uh, Partly for not really knowing how to do them because
Hmm.
we've lost that with the digitalization of our world.
Hmm.
Talking in comments is one thing, but having a legitimate back and forth discourse where we ask each other questions
Hmm.
about what our beliefs are is very different than stating what I believe, being a keyboard warrior in your comment
Yeah.
section, right? And that I think is is part and parcel of the problem that we have in the world today, and why this work is so important is people don't know how to communicate anymore.
Yeah.
I was editing a piece from a previous recording where I kind of talk about we're in this like Tower of Babel moment
Hmm.
where no one is speaking to each other anymore. We're not reaching out to each other. We're just staunchly defending our positions in the world,
Hmm.
and meanwhile the world around us is on fire, and
Yeah.
we've got all these little pockets of reality that we formed. And this is where we're clinging to our bases and our castles, and even in the occult world, right? It's
Hmm.
not just the people who are doing their normal thing. It's our circles,
Hmm.
the places that we run in. I think it's important to be balanced in that approach, and I'd like to hear how that works for you. Right? Politics, religion; those are very sticky subjects that people don't like to talk about in general,
Hmm.
and in this world, it's even harder to talk about them. So
Hmm.
how do you approach that in a public discourse,
Like discussing politics and religion and things
and
like
how it
that.
and how it works with your sovereignty and
Hmm.
your sorcery? Like,
Yeah, sure. I guess, you know, the best place to approach it is from a place of compassion and truth,
Mm-hmm.
because uh, often truth, I find, kind of just, even though some people are unwilling, even if you're like, here's the evidence, here's the truth, or whatever, I find that if you're coming from a genuine place where you're not trying to convert anyone, once again, but you
Mm-hmm.
genuinely are like, here's the truth, here's the information. I actually had this happen recently in a place that uh, that we uh, that we frequent with some of our friends that we hang out, and this person who is like claiming to be LGBTQ also, claimed to be a Catholic, and I literally like, and we had this debate because they were trying to kind of force me to have like a political debate that quickly became about religion too, because you can't really separate the two, especially in our world today. But I
Mm-hmm.
basically, ended up in an argument with this person, and even though I was genuinely trying to just, I guess I was kind of more so frustrated because, it was like they were smart enough to know, but willing to kind of, protect their religion. But I was basically just stating things about like the Catholic Church and, all the horrors they've committed. And they were like, yeah, but, and it's like, I guess the best way to approach those conversations is that, like basically how I did. I stated, the truth. I stated facts, things that you can look up and are legitimate. And then at some point, I basically ended it with compassion, because I was like, you know what, I think it's best that we kind of end the conversation, because we were both kind of getting frustrated, and I didn't want it to become like
Mm.
a fight. So that, because I feel like that kind of detracts anyways. But I think, being able to have like a clear, based in fact debate, between people is kind of the best way to approach it. But knowing that you may not always be able to have that conversation, because there are people that they even know the truth. It's like people who know that certain religions
Mm.
are just not real, but they still fall in line and follow it, and to the T, and then want other people to live it too. And so, so yeah, it's a difficult thing, especially because it's all emotionally charged. Like when we're seeing the way that, the church continues to have a hand in all this crazy shit. And then politically, like seeing in the US, our, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
our, like, democracy is gone, like, or done, like if it kind of ever did exist. Um, and we
Right.
see that, I feel like, and I don't mean to be like pessimistic or anything. I just mean like we're seeing that, like, the system not work how it's set up to work, basically, and people who are in power just telling us to keep voting. And it's like, well, we've been doing that for a long time, and I don't we need something new, something better. And but yeah, it's an emotionally charged thing, so it's really difficult to even talk about, because you're uh with the Trump era and stuff, you had like even people I knew who were once really liberal, within no time they made this huge switch to where they completely were, this almost extreme liberal, to where they were an extreme, like right
It's
winger and
wild, isn't it?
conspiracy nut and all that. And I love conspiracies like anyone else, but yeah, it's just wild times that we live in. So I think the best way to approach it is like, some people you can have that conversation with, and if you can, it's healthy, and it needs to be had. But knowing that sometimes you just have to be like, it's like people who you can't help it if they don't want to be helped, or
Mm-hmm.
want to hear the truth, and they'll hear what they will. And so it's wild.
Right. It is. I tend to defer to Socrates in how he approaches things. I'm just going to ask you lots of questions. You've got a
Yeah.
position. I'm going to keep asking you questions about the
Hmm.
validity of what you're saying, not with an aim necessarily to prove you wrong,
Hmm.
because I found that I drive myself nuts trying to
Hmm.
prove what I think in my head and try to translate it and put it into you. I spent decades, it
Yeah.
feels like, on social media fighting that fight,
Hmm.
and it doesn't bear any fruit, right? Very heavily politically active in my 20s. Now I'm almost 40, and I'm going, I'm not going to waste my time on that. I'm not going to waste my time trying to convert you to something that is probably never going to work for you.
Hmm.
Like, I don't want to force my paradigm on you either,
Hmm.
right? But I will ask you questions for the sake of potentially getting you to a point where you fully understand your position,
Hmm.
and where I can too, because I can't have a communication, I can't have a discourse with you if I don't understand where you're coming from.
Sure. Yeah.
And we all are operating, and the why this world is so
Hmm.
zany right now. It's wild, and I understand there's definite traumas and suffering around it.
Hmm.
But I'm also like, it's like watching a movie and you can't look away, and you're like,
Hmm.
wow, this is wild. It's a crazy time to be alive.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
and I'm there for it, because out of this chaos can come order.
Something
Out of it,
beautiful.
right?
Hmm.
Something really amazing for those of us that put in the work, and it starts with ourselves, I think.
Hmm.
Obviously, we can only do so much in changing those views
Yeah.
outside of us, but if we display, if we act and behave in a virtuous or somewhat righteous way, then
Hmm.
others are automatically attracted to it. Like we were talking about before we hit record here, that's one of the things about you that I liked so much in a world of social media, where you can, when you're a magician, when you're a
Hmm.
sorcerer, you see through people's bullshit really
Yeah.
quick. You're like,
Yeah.
look, I I get what you're about, and you were so genuine, and so I really appreciated that. But that is a display of someone who's done the work on
Hmm.
themselves, and that is how, in my opinion, and that's just my little old opinion, that's how you change the world, is by radiating that out in whatever
Hmm.
way, shape, or
Yeah.
form, being your true self,
Hmm.
and that comes in so many different forms. And sometimes we don't like the forms that somebody else's true self radiates, right?
It's true.
And that's okay too, right? Like
Hmm.
there's got to be an antagonist
Hmm.
to help you with your growth. Like
Yeah.
there has to be. That's the way this cosmos is set up. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't like it, and they want to get out, clamoring to bust against the Gnostic walls. Get me out
Hmm.
of here, please.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to inform everybody. I don't know if there is an out, but there is a
Hmm.
through. There is a through, and it's
Yeah.
right here, right now, and
Hmm.
we have the power to do something about it. And I think that's a great place for us to kind of start talking about sorcery. What is sorcery? Conjures up so many
Hmm.
images for people, just like
Hmm.
wizard or magician does. And in the community, there's people take on labels to communicate what they're doing, right? Largely, a lot of those labels, they lose their meaning, and so you kind of have to ask somebody, what do you mean by sorcerer?
Hmm.
What is it to you? How
Yeah.
does sorcery present in your praxis, in
Hmm.
your life, in the image that you build for yourself, right?
Hmm.
What does that look like for Adam Darkley? What is sorcery?
Sure. Yeah, so I would say, as I've said in the past on like in other interviews and things, like speaking, like people ask me, like basically like conjure, like what does conjure mean to me, or what does it mean in
Mm-hmm.
general? And I think that sorcery and conjure in a lot of ways are kind of blanket terms for many traditions.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that it makes it easier to kind of talk about. It kind of gives you that instant understanding, and then you can kind of go on instead of being like, oh, I mean this tradition or whatever. But I think
Right.
sorcery, it encompasses many different traditions. Potentially like goetic magic or potentially astrological magic. But I would say ultimately it is performing some form of magic or like conjure, where you're conjuring things up for some kind of magical purpose. But yeah, it's when I say sorcery, I'm kind of it's to me it's almost like another word for magic, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of saying, like, in this path of sorcery or like for these sorceress, intents or whatever. So yeah, I would say it's definitely like a blanket term for a lot of the different traditions that I tend to work in, and it just sounds cool too, honestly. Especially if you're like trying to weave a tale, or you're talking about like a product or like if you
Mm-hmm.
want to learn how to practice like ritual magic or sorcery or whatever, it just sounds cool. But yeah, sorcery to me
It
is
does.
it's magic, and it can encompass multiple magical paths. So yeah, that's it. That's kind
Mm-hmm.
of the gist of it, I guess, for me.
It's funny too, because we have so much influence on these terms, right?
Hmm.
It takes me back to like D&D, right?
Yeah.
Sorcerer's born with it, right? The warlock gets it from some higher power. The magician
Yeah.
reads the books. The wizard magician
hmm
reads the books to get the arcane power. And to a
Yeah.
certain degree, we all do some
hmm
variant of that based on the traditions that we've either been brought up in or have begun to explore.
hmm
I I think it's an apt term, especially for, like you were talking about with conjure in particular, or hoodoo.
hmm
Something that I've studied a little bit of here and there over the years, and implemented the little pieces into my practice, because there's people like to divide everything up and describe the
hmm
different things that they're doing, right? There's the theurgical stuff where I'm doing stuff for higher spiritual
hmm
attainments or spiritual evolution. But hey, if I've got all this access to power, might I be able to get myself a little bit of extra coin here and there,
hmm
or attract some extra love? Those aren't bad things. They have been viewed by such by so many people. I don't take that view personally. I think along the road, and you see this in yoga, you see this in
hmm
Buddhist elevation, you attain certain powers as you elevate yourself in spiritual
hmm
evolution. And that's how you get the miracle workers. That's how you get even the saints. Their
hmm
powers are developed through spiritual evolution, and they use them, again,
hmm
like we were talking about, to help those around them. And you see that often in the archetypes of people who are working miracles, right? They're working miracles to aid others around them, and I
hmm
think that's a beautiful thing. I love the way that brings that in, that conjure brings that in, that root work. It's physical, and it brings me back to my roots in the craft. It
hmm
was where that was my gateway into this Western esoteric tradition,
hmm
was the craft. Can you describe the process of using sorcery to enhance your personal sovereignty? What does that look like for you? What would you
Sure.
say do? A lot of what we talk about on this show, uh, or what I'm trying to do, is get to like the practice pieces, like
hmm
actual things that people can get their hands on and do.
hmm
Because a lot of people talk about the theory. It's always the theory. My new book coming out is all this theory about this, that, and the other thing. But what do you actually do that helps your
hmm
life?
Sure.
So, in that context, what does that look like for you? What is the
Sure.
process of using magic or conjure or sorcery to enhance your sovereignty, your autonomy?
Yeah, so for me, since I work within certain, multiple traditions, multiple paths, I use kind of an infusion, of multiple magical methods to kind of maintain my peace, my prosperity, all those kind of things. So I kind of regularly fire off magic on kind of every level towards maintaining my
Mm-hmm.
peace, keeping my business growing and the money flowing, keeping my relations and my reputation kind of in a good standing, and so a lot of that can look like something between candle or lamp magic, utilizing like certain prepared baths. It can look like working with like some of the Pentacles of Solomon, certain charms, talismans, um, petitioning certain spirits like angels, or working with like the four kings through like goetic magic. So it can look like a
Mm-hmm.
number of things, honestly. And that's all. I think you saw that post earlier on Facebook too. That all kind of changes for me every 3 or 4 months, like every quarter. Something, I'm just like, things kind of get to a point, you know, um, after kind of soaring high for a certain time where I'm like, okay, I'm not getting the same result that I want from this, or I want more, or I'll kind of tweak and shift and reformulate or rework something for larger or greater results or whatever, or or
Mm-hmm.
or change up how I'm petitioning or working or whatever. But yeah, ultimately, I'm just kind of maintaining and building upon my, for my own sake, like my business, my relationship, my marriage, or whatever. I'm constantly learning and figuring out new ways and engineering new ways, or even some of the allies and spirits and gods that I work with are quite literally sharing, ways that I need to kind of
Mm-hmm.
shift how I'm working or whatever, on a regular basis. So.
I find that too, and it's funny that you brought that up on Facebook just before we recorded, because I find myself shifting gears with the seasons,
Hmm.
almost like even sometimes lunarly, like
Hmm.
throughout the month, and it's self guided. Like it's like once I pushed play on I'm doing this occult thing, the rest of it's kind of out of my hands. When I
Yeah.
try to force something, I tend to have lesser results
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and not have as much fun as if when I release the practice and let it guide itself. And you're right on the button there too. The spirits that we work with are often driving the bus. It feels
Yeah.
like. I mean, we have our agency, we have our sovereignty even with
Hmm.
them, but if we want to go along for the ride, it does. At least in my case, I'm like being somebody in recovery. When I drive the bus, bad things happen.
Mm.
Like just in
I get
general,
that.
me driving the bus, it's usually me and the kids go off the cliff, and some crazy shit goes down. But if I let the divine drive this process for me, greater and
Hmm.
greater things become revealed over time, and that has been true time and time again.
Hmm.
And it often leads me into funny places, like in the midst of doing a lot of Bacchic Dionysian rites right now, and out of nowhere, and I just started like maybe two weeks ago, whatever, and now Dionysus is all over everything.
Yeah.
This all over. We got the Olympics, and we've got like people searching it all over Twitter, and I'm
That
like,
is funny.
this is funny, but also I'm not surprised anymore because there's bigger things involved here that are
Hmm.
driving me towards these sorts of things. And so it's quarterly. I find myself in a new vein, a new tradition, bringing some of the tools with me, discarding some of them. Right? I'll go through a time of initiation, exploration, and then okay, that's something that I can use. That's something that I can put in my toolkit and use later. And it's refreshing that the quest is never done.
Hmm.
It just keeps going. There's always something more to unpack and explore, and that's always exciting. Hmm. Let's see. So, bridging the gap of sovereignty, autonomy, there's always the question of who can do these things, right? Who's allowed to do these things? And we might
Hmm.
get into gatekeeping and whatnot here, but my main question
Sure.
is who can practice these methods in your opinion, right? There are some, that you have to be initiated into, right?
Hmm.
Some that you can learn on your own. Some that may not be culturally available to you wherever you
Sure.
are, right?
Hmm.
But who can practice sorcery in your opinion, right?
Sure. And I think, something you just touched on is a big part of it for me is it depends on, what tradition or culture or peoples, that belongs to. And, there are, because there are people who would say, if you're not part of that race or those people, or if you're not ancestrally connected, then you shouldn't practice it, and so what I feel is like there are paths like hoodoo and conjure and American like Southern root work. Uh, I feel like that. I feel like that African slave magic liberated and freed them, and then it's kind of like High John the Conqueror. His whole legend is
Mm,
like so. Essentially, he was brought here, forced here, he was enslaved. He had endured all this stuff. Basically, like overthrew his either the quote unquote slave masters, or another part of the story is he like tricked the devil, and then he
mm-hmm,
returned to Africa, but he left his magic in the Jalap root, the High John the Conqueror root, and so
mm-hmm,
it's like he left that magic here for who needed it, and so conjure is a big part of conjure is community and liberation and empowering others, and so that we're all free, and from oppression and slavery, and in whatever form we experience it. And so I would say that there are certain traditions like conjure that are kind of for everyone, while remembering that those that belongs to, and we have that in part due to the sacrifice of many people who endured
mm-hmm.
hellish stuff. But yeah, and then there are certain traditions, I would say, like Haitian voodoo, or certain paths that I feel like that is it is more of like a religion in a way, and it is more basically like, it's more, it's more for them basically. It's their religion, it's their practices. Um, Kind of like how I feel, uh, about other traditions too. I would say, it kind of depends on each person. It's kind of their perspective. Obviously, it's a very personal thing,
Right.
but I think culture, appropriation and people misappropriating, you know, cultures or traditions is a big deal. So, but yeah, I would say that sorcery in general is, I think it is our innate, that it's our birthright to practice magic, because those forces that we're working with, like, kind of like grandmother spider, the web of the cosmos. It's like we were
Hmm.
born to kind of, to not only be a part of that, but it's like a part of us, and we are. It's just as everything else is a natural force of the cosmos, we are too, and so that's kind of part of the co-creating or creation that we
Hmm.
partake in. And so magic is kind of like our means or a tool or our power or whatever to kind of operate, cosmically, to create new narratives or heal or whatever. And so
Right.
I think, magic or sorcery, we're kind of taking, our natural role, we're partaking and participating in co-creation or creation or whatever. But yeah, I would say it's for everyone. And then when it comes down to certain traditions or paths, people have their different feelings for things. But I always say that the best thing you can do is approach, any tradition with reverence and respect and love, and then, and learn and read, and then and maybe find a mentor or someone that is legitimate and has
Hmm.
a great reputation, like with voodoo or some path that you feel like, somebody is white and they feel like that they're really called. It's like reach out to people who are elders, who are legitimate, and have a conversation with them, because you know you know because there's much more that people need to know about things, I feel like, too, before they can say, whether it's right or wrong too. So,
Right.
because
Yeah. It's
I've had people tell me that because I kind of look white, and probably do have a whole lot more quote unquote white or Caucasian than some of the, other things, that, because I'm also have some indigenous blood and some other stuff going on too. But yeah, like there are people who are like, you can't practice hoodoo or conjure because you're white or you look white or whatever.
right.
And so I've experienced that multiple times over. I've even had somebody who was white tell me that, like, how dare I practice, like hoodoo and not speak up against like their oppression and all this stuff. And so I've kind of dealt with all that over the years too. So I feel many different ways. I guess
Oh,
would be
it's
the
a
best way
sticky.
to put it.
Yeah, it's sticky, right? It's like you're dealing with largely people's opinions, their feelings,
Hmm.
their understandings of
Hmm.
what a practice is, and in an online format, all stops are pulled and people can say
Hmm.
whatever they want because
Yeah.
they're free to, without any recourse, right? I can say
Hmm.
whatever I want because you can't get me, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's how it has been, at least in the age of the internet. But it's funny because there's so much sovereignty packed into all of that, right? There's the sovereignty of the tradition, the people who started it. There's the sovereignty of the human being that supersedes all of the cultural milieu that you have
Hmm.
attached to it, all your labels, right? All these things are in the end human things, and we're all one set of beings,
Hmm.
um, and we choose to divide ourselves up by all these different labels to give ourselves community, to give ourselves a sense of understanding or place in the universe. But in the end, it's all human. And so me as an individual, I'm like, okay, I'm coming to this, like you said, from a place of compassion, curiosity, understanding. I want to gain something from looking into someone else's bag of tricks, their
Hmm.
mindset, how they look at the world. And if there's something there that can help me,
Hmm.
far be it from them to tell me not to use it, right?
Yeah.
Um, now, that applies maybe to certain elements, right? I've had the conversation with various medicine men and shaman over the years. Like, what are your takes on people using white sage or whatnot, or using a drumming journey to descend to
Mm.
the underworld, to the lower world. And I don't care if they use it. I'm glad they use it. Is more often than not the answer. I'm glad that they're using these tools. I'm glad
Mm.
that people are actually taking the medicine and they're doing these sorts of things. And it's usually the people who aren't necessarily attached to it that are raising the most,
Mm.
heck about it. Right? They're
Yeah.
saying, you can't do that because you're this, that, or the other thing. And in the end, if you're respecting the process, if you're
Mm.
learning, if you're approaching these spirits who have their own level of sovereignty and will
Mm.
give you the keys to the castle, so to speak, then you don't have to worry about it so much, right? More often than not, it's all about the labels, right? It's about,
Yeah.
I want to present myself as this mask online with my new Instagram account where I'm going to be this new Conjure root worker and sell you a bunch of crystals. Like that's problematic, obviously, but you know,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, there's a lot of weird pitfalls, and in
Mm.
the end, if you're if you're not out there like talking about these things, if you're not out there saying, "Hey, I'm a ninth level whatever," that people, the silliness that I've seen on some people's like profiles about
Mm.
what they are. If you're not out there broadcasting it, you're doing these things in house for yourself for personal
Mm.
development. There really can't be much wrong there. There really
Yeah.
can't be, especially if you're coming at it from a place of wanting to understand more about yourself and the world around you, or another set of people. I think there's I've gained so much from all the different trajectories that I've gone down in
Mm.
this. I do not, for a minute, claim to be a hoodoo priest or anything like that.
Yeah.
But hey, I will put together a mojo bag if I'm in the need for something, right? And
Sure.
and that's a tool, right?
Mm.
That's not something that's owned by anything. The herbs I grow in my garden, the plants that grow around me, those aren't owned by anybody.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
that level of ownership cannot ever be instilled on one group of humans or whatnot, whether it's a plant
Yeah.
medicine or any of those
Yeah.
things. Even the spirits themselves,
Mm.
they resist being in buckets. They do not like it when somebody says you're this or that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were mentioning like white sage, like kind of how I feel about like that, and I would say like some of those things we have the issue of like commercialization and colonialization, like where
Right.
not only like people are uh like, oh, indigenous people are utilizing this, but people will like take that and, well, now it's ours and we own it, and they'll try to
Right.
build an origin story where they always worked with that or something. And then you have the commercialization of it where it's like with the new age movement and stuff over time, like the market is flooded and saturated with all these knockoff cheap, like, you know uh you know uh earrings that are like tiny little dream catchers with like fake or dyed feathers, and like all this like
Right.
little trinket like bullshit kind of knickknack stuff. And I think that's kind of where a lot of that originates for me, is where like if someone's like, do you feel like people should use white sage or whatever, I would say that plants are plants either way. So like no matter how people feel about the culture or that certain tradition or whatever, they do exist. I would say that it comes to, if people call it like smudging or whatever, like I think it really comes down to, it's like if you're trying to say like take from them and utilize that and possess it, or if you're just like working within those within that
Mm-hmm.
certain thing, that certain system with magic. And I think it coming approaching it with like I said before, love, respect, and just knowing like this is a path. It's part of their culture. Like hoodoo and conjure, it's like I feel very at home working in that
Right.
within root work, but I'm also not thinking like this is mine, or I'm literally like, when I came to hoodoo, I was in like a low place in life, and so I needed like anything. And so I've been blessed to have mentors and people who taught me more, and even like trade secret stuff that their mentors taught them that I've never shared with anyone. And so like I feel very grateful to work within hoodoo, and have taught many people stuff, from things that I've learned, things that spirits have shared. And so I feel at home within hoodoo, but I'm also not racist, and I also I know that like I'm a guest kind of. I'm like a visitor
Hmm.
when it comes to that. It's like I know that like you know it's a part of a whole people's like lineage and stuff, and so, but yeah, it's one of those weird intersections, kind of an interesting crossroads because, we live in a time where people are trying to misappropriate or make something out of this or say that Wicca was always like, this or whatever, like to completely rewrite the history of a tradition or to say it was like I'm a part of a like people who claim to be a part of this hundreds of years or 1,000-year-old lineage. It's like really there's no that would mean nothing anyways because it's like okay now what like unless you're really something and so we live in a time where there's so much misinformation and mistruth around things that people are already caught up and not knowing what's real and
Hmm.
it's wild.
It is. It is. It goes to talking about what I like to harp on a lot. There's so much information. It's like damn near impossible to find
Hmm.
the good information without
Yeah.
having a critical thinking faculty, which so
Hmm.
many people are lacking for various reasons.
Yep.
Attention spans, the lack of reading. Like I saw something crazy the other day, some statistic about like 65% of people who have graduated high school in the United States will never read a book after high school. 65% will never read a book.
That's wild.
That's insane to me. That's insane to me. And so that means you're getting your information online. Right? You're getting it in bits and pieces, and you used even the term misappropriation. I think that's really accurate because most of the time I think people are doing it, even especially within the occult, with the best of intentions. They just
Hmm.
don't know. They're
Sure.
ignorant to it. And
Hmm.
they're saying, they're exploring too. I mean, I don't know how
Hmm.
many times when I was first in this, I'd be learning about something and I'd be talking about it, and then I'd come to find that it was totally off base.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now I have to have compassion for myself because I was working with what I was working with. I didn't know at the time,
Hmm.
but I myself, my own philosophy is if you're not striving to get better,
Hmm.
then you're not really doing anything at all. And that gets us to like a question that I have for you is there a particular set of principles that you work within or a philosophy that guides your sorcery? Right? Is there something like some major values that you put into this, like when you're setting down to put together a spell or working for someone, what's guiding you? What's the moral guidance there?
Hmm.
How are you putting everything together?
Yeah. I, I would say that probably depends on like the magic at hand, especially if I'm
Sure.
working like on behalf of someone or for myself. Um, but honestly, being willing to do whatever the hell I have to do to accomplish whatever I'm trying to do, like whether it means like you know, getting my hands dirty or going to the graveyard or I'm like with Hoodoo and Conjure, I've done some crazy shit, like stuff that it totally worked, but it was like stuff I wouldn't even mention, like like on a podcast or anything. But like
Yeah.
I,
Who? Yeah.
I've used like a one time, and this is something I can mention, but like I used like a powder to control and dominate my boss. Dusted like the dusted like his rug in front of his office, sprinkled it on his door handle, sprinkled it on his I snuck into his office and like sprinkled it on his keyboard and his chair where he would sit and come and like I have done some shady shit even for clients. Like it's like whatever. That's the mindset that I go into it. It's like whatever I have to do, I will do it. Like obviously within means, but like I am very serious. Like I joke about magic sometimes and stuff, but like then there's that mode where I just kind of lock in and I'm like 0 to 100 kind of like I'm all in
Mm.
and I'm like not even I am gonna get in my own way. And so I think that's a big part of it is like we put so much effort into learning and figuring out how to do magic successfully or to perform it in whatever way. And then people are it's like they're trying to open that door while they're actively locking it or standing in the way. Like you're like I'm trying to get through, but you're literally like holding on to the door or whatever. And so I think
Like, come on,
people
just
literally
just go
learning
through
how
it.
to, yeah, I think people like making a habit and learning how to literally, like how to learn when they're in their way and how to get the hell out of the way. And because often they'll perform that spell and then they sit and then they wring their hands and they worry and they think of every way it can go wrong, or every way they did it wrong or whatever. And it's like, well, focus that same kind of use a little bit of alchemy energetically and channel that energy into how it can go right and sit and
Mm,
embody. Like one thing that one of my mentors has taught me, and it's part of the magical transformation course that I teach my retainer clients, and infusing your magic with joy, because
mm,
everything is like emotional and emotionally charged, and magic is such an emotional process. And so if you, when performing magic, you're burning the candle, you're praying to some angel, you're speaking the petition, you're envisioning it happen, but you're actually like, because we can make ourselves feel anything. You can make yourself like real pissed or like,
mm.
super happy without like no effort. And so you can make yourself feel joy. And so if you're seeing yourself getting that job, you got that promotion, that new car, you're at the top of the mountain, you're like living life. You see that, but you feel the joy of that too, and you let it kind of rush over you and kind of pour into your magic. That is such a key too. And so people, when they're doing magic, sometimes you're doing too much thinking. Like you need to get down into your body, or get into the feels and really infuse your magic in that way too. And but yeah, it's like, get out of your own way. You already put all that hard work into making it happen. Are you really gonna put even more effort into being like, nope, I'm not even gonna let that happen? So.
Right. I think that comes from the desire to control the process.
Hmm.
We're coming at this from a level of I want to control reality. Right. That's one of the reasons I got into this. Is I want to control reality. I want to better my life. I want to do these things. But like you said, we have to be able to step through the door into
Hmm.
that unknown. And
Hmm.
that's what stops us from doing anything, magic or otherwise. I tend to think that everything we do is a magical act, anyways. It's just what I call a magical act now is me putting my
Hmm.
conscious will towards something. And that now just is anything. Doing the dishes is a magical act for me. Just get it done. Like
Hmm.
move through the door. Get to
Right.
the unknown because you don't know what's happening at the end of the
Hmm.
dishes. Something else is going to happen. And it's no different in magic. Your chores are no different than your magic. You have to
Yeah.
release what you think is best for you and what's going to happen, right? I may want more money. That's why I tend to I've over the years I've tend to release specificity in what I'm doing for working for myself, right? I'm
Hmm.
like, I know what I think I need, but that may not necessarily be what I actually need.
Yeah.
I'm I'm not necessarily the best judge all the time about what I need, right? I may need more money or I want more security financially, but how that comes to me is usually not up to me. And so if I
Hmm.
try to force a specific outcome, it's much more difficult than
Yeah.
for me to put all my will into the best possible chance of of the overall feeling that I want to have.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily the money, but the security is what I
Yeah.
want, right? I want to be able to securely be able to go to the grocery store and not have to worry about it or these sorts of things, simple
Yeah.
things. And so it is hard to release the attachment of the desire because the desire is there and I want it so bad. And I think I want this thing so bad. I want this person. I want to be in love with this person and I want them to love me back.
Hmm.
May not be the right thing for you.
Yeah.
And so you have to release it and allow your spirits, your guides, the universe, whatever label you want to call it, to bring you the thing you really need to work with. So that thing is not what you think it is, and you get it and you go, oh, that sucks. That's not what I wanted. All right, we are back. Now, like we were just talking, Adam, whenever you're a magical person working with technology and you haven't fully mastered the art of technomancy, everything that can go wrong in a recording will go wrong. Because magic and technology, I don't know, they're funky bedfellows. But we were chatting about the principles and philosophies that guide sorcery, and you were talking about how you're guided by the aim, and we were talking about how we have to get out of our own way in order to get these things done. Um, I wonder if we can find some inspiration for, or even a kind of a compass of sorts, by looking to famous archetypes or
Uh-huh.
historical figures in sorcery. I was thinking about it while looking at your branding in general, the devil himself, right? It's very Aleister Crowley. Like you're leaning into something that is provocative.
Hmm.
You're saying, "Oh, look, I am this," and I don't care if you've got a problem with it.
Yeah.
Um, is there a particular attitude, archetype, or I guess personality that in history you've really gravitated towards modeling yourself after in some way?
Uh, yeah, there probably are. But I would say that there are probably far more representations in the animal kingdom that are devilish to me, that embody the trickster, like coyote or raven, that can just be honestly a couple rambunctious assholes, but they're powerful allies, especially to the witch and the heathen, and they really have a way of kind of shining light on the things that we most are trying to hide, and making and pushing us to truly embrace who we are, and our power, and to really make something, and essentially to initiate us further, into into walking in our power, and doing something with it. But yeah, I would say, they're um as far as figures like human beings that I would say that I would look to, that are quite devilish. What's funny is that it in some way reminds me of the movie Legend with Tim Curry, where
Oh
he's like the devil,
yes.
like Satan. I don't know, but that whole vibe, in that movie, like that he embodies and stuff, is just too wicked. Like even the big ass horns and everything. But yeah,
It
like
was so
his
over the
laugh.
top and wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, like, you know, in 2019, when we began Devil's Conjure, so, I work with Saint Cyprian of Antioch, and so he's one of my oldest allies, and he's actually the one of the main allies that, kind of pushed me and brought things to the point where I could give life to Devil's Conjure, but he even gave me like recipes for like the first three oils and what to name, like how to name, all that stuff. And so over the years, a lot of what I've done and accomplished as the devil is in due part and thanks to devils like Cyprian, or these other powers that have guided me and helped me
Hmm.
figure my own shit out, and things like that. So yeah, like it was a big decision when I decided to call my business Devil's Conjure. Even people close to me were like, you have to realize, like, that's gonna scare people away. It's gonna push people away. And I knew that, like, and I sat with that, and
Right.
I still decided to go along with it, because one thing that Cyprian reminded me is, like, as many people as it scares away, even more people it draws in, because of the
Hmm.
taboo, or
Well, the right
or then
people.
then things like that too. But yeah, like, and what I found is, like, there are clients that come to me over the time, and they're like, honestly, your name completely freaks me out. And like the retainer service, it's $666 a month. And so I've had people that were like, I don't feel comfortable with that number. And I'm like, and so, but essentially what it comes down to is they realize, like, their situation is dire and desperate enough that they're kind of willing to move on from that, because that's a small detail when it comes to the vastness of their situation. And so I found that, a lot of people, they're actually intrigued, and kind of
Hmm.
like awestruck, and they want to know more, and so, but yeah, like, it was a and I have many times referred to myself as the devil, or your favorite neighborhood conjure man, or favorite neighborhood devil, and things like that. But yeah, like, it's a whole thing. I was actually talking with Darian, my other half, about that this morning. Is like, he was talking about people who name them have magical names, and he's like, people who name themselves like something Tempest, and it's like, you have to realize that when you do that, a tempest is like this huge, just
Hmm.
crazy chaotic storm, especially like among this on the sea, like a sea tempest or whatever. And so when you name yourself something like that, you kind of take that on like a mantle almost, or like you take that on like that archetypal power or whatever. And so like with the devil, I've actually had to create a practice and means of, like we mentioned earlier, not becoming this person who's just like scary and I work, and trying to be like this most terrible person, but actually finding balance in the devil, because the devil is these, and has been used as a scapegoat, like Azazel and all these things in certain practices, in certain traditions, as a scapegoat and as this force of evil. But in there are other cultures even more so, where the devil is seen as the good guy, and like, even though in hoodoo, like you have products like Run Devil Run or certain things where you're the devil is embodying misfortune or some enemy or something. The devil also, he has a hand in the twist of every fortune and fate. He has the hand in and so much of like the fabric of reality, and so there's a goodness there too, and a benefit. And so I think balance is something that's really important, to strike a good balance with all of that too, because I don't want to be the devil where people are afraid of me and intimidated, and it's like a put on or something. I want to, I want people like how there's a duality to everything. So I want people to I want to embody that in myself, and I try to, as the devil even. So yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And I love that you bring up the names and taking on a magical name and how that informs. I mean, even our regular names are names that that are given to us at birth dictate so much. If you meet somebody with a name that has the same name as you, right? Say Adam, right? You put a bunch of Adams in a room, there's a lot more crossover than you'd realize. Like, right out the gates, you get a couple of dudes in a room with the same name, and a couple of dudes over here with the same name, and you start to see them behave the same way. The name has intrinsic power. And it's the same with the names that we take on, right? Our magical mottos, whatever we decide to go by, is going to inform. And I've seen this because I've taken different names over time, whether I'm with this order or I'm doing this working right now. This dictates my name. This one stuck around for a while, Frater O.D, but anytime I take a new one, my life dramatically changes. Everything that's going on within my life changes, and it's not even just the names; it's the archetypes that you're talking about, right? Everything from down to the pop culture that we ingest as part of that informs our experience and colors the lenses of what we're going to see and how we're going to view things, and what is present for us that isn't for other people. And that's like, we have a pair of magical spectacles that have different settings, and each one of us gets to tamper with those. And as you become more adept with it as a magician or witch sorcerer, you can tune that shit. You can tune into, I want to be I want to be a little bit this, or I want to be a little bit more over here. And so I think it's fascinating to see the disguises that the divine puts on, right? We know as those of us in here, we have a unity, and we're all playing these fun little parts, and it's that unity going, you know what, I want to look through the eyes of Adam Darkley. That's how I want to experience this, and what a beautiful thing to be able to do, right? To be able to be a part of that yourself, right? So it's that duality again. It's the unity in you, and you guys are two ends of that pole, but the unity is living vicariously through Adam Darkley and that lens of this devilish, roguish guy. I love it. And I think we need to be more aware of that in our practice. What we're saying, our words have tremendous power. We need to respect them more. I'm always harping on silence. Like, shh, shut your mouth. You don't need to tell everybody everything that you're doing magically. I know it's fun and it gives us validation and maybe gives us some street cred here and there, but we don't always have to talk about it, because that you give away a part of your power when you talk about it, in my opinion, right? We can defend it to a certain extent, right? And not everybody's out to get us and all that, but be very careful how we speak and what we speak about. I think is vital, because we will change our experience and other people's perception of us based on how we present, and our words are a big part of that. So I think it's cool. And that I'm sure informs your life as an online sorcerer. Like, what a cool time to be alive, to be a sorcerer, working on behalf as a miracle worker for other people. Um, I think that's cool as hell. I think it's awesome to see it, and a lot of people do it, right? We have so many in the community where they make talismans or they're creators. You see a lot of people doing tarot divinations, those sorts of things, but uh, there's only a handful of people that are working on actual ritual workings on behalf of other people and doing it well, right? There's a whole bunch of like scammy stuff, and then there's the people who are actually doing the work, and that's why I was so excited to bring you on, because I was like, not very many people do this, um, and do it well. So what's that like now? You're a sorcerer. Back in the day, you would have been hovelled away somewhere potentially. Somebody'd have to come to you and like present a problem, and then you'd come up with something. But now you've got the internet behind you to broaden your reach. And what is life like in that vein?
You're saying like, what's it like to have people coming to me like as like a professional or
Yeah,
something to that degree?
yeah. Like, what is it like living in that space where I'm a miracle worker, I'm doing these things on behalf of other people.
Hmm.
Um, just in
It's
general, what's that like?
yeah, it's kind of awesome. Yeah, I actually have been offering services before I ever had like a business, like kind of like unwarranted, like I didn't even kind of ask for it, kind of thing.
Mm,
Like as far as magic in the past for people and work on behalf of family or like even kind of shamanic healing work and stuff. But I actually my first paid client paid me like $20 to do like a love spell, and that spiraled out and became a whole thing because I realized that they were like lying to me about something in the situation. But it was a good lesson,
oh boy.
and that kind of I don't know, that was kind of like the beginning. That person came out of like nowhere. It just happened that I was in conversation. They mentioned their situation, and I was like, I could totally help you or whatever. And had not really ever had never taken money or done anything like that. But yeah, I would say leading up to where things are now, it's a really wild it's a really wild experience. Um, I started, as I mentioned, in 2019, I was offering spells for like $20 or $10, and just basically trying to do, just not only trying to get out there, but just to do my thing. Like, I knew that at that point that that it was kind of like what I was born to do, like what I was made for. It's kind of like how I'm kind of geared, as far as like how I perceive things and how I think and all that. And it makes sense to take what I've learned and over the years and be able to apply it to other people's situation. But I honestly I feel honored. I've had people who've trusted me over the years and not only helped me get to where I am today, but like basically trusting me with their situations, like some things that were like extremely vulnerable or like really scary,
Oh,
like
I'm
people
sure.
dealing with custody battles where they're about to lose their children, or eviction, or hellish landlords, or just I've dealt with a large part of our clients are women escaping like really scary situations, and
Yeah.
so I've managed to help women who were you know being horribly abused and stuff be able to kind of get beyond that and get away from them and actually build their life, and then clients who could never get their business off the ground, just seeing their business through working with me just take off like never before, and they're just kind of like, what the hell, they're just taken aback by the whole thing. So it's honestly awesome. Yeah, and I look forward to
I'm sure it's
seeing how that
rewarding.
evolves. Do what?
I said I'm sure it's rewarding. Like, it's just,
Yeah,
you get as much out of it as they get out of it as well.
yeah. Hmm.
That's the funny thing about a miracle, right? You're talking about working wonders in a way, because that wonder comes through you as the vessel. It's automatically going to change
Hmm.
you at the same time, right? And so you get to partake in some of that magic in your own life.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you have like uh, awful, right? You have like a piece of that comes your way. If you're working on some success spell for somebody else, I'm sure it impacts your business as well in your life.
Yeah.
And so not in a selfish way naturally, but it's just as a natural recourse of doing the work yourself.
Mm.
You get like a little bonus on top of it, and then to be able to, I don't know, I've had a handful of times where somebody's come to me and say, hey, I've got this issue, can you help me out? And I'll put together something for them and walk them through it and say, hey, do this, say this for a couple of days, and then work it out. And they come back and they say, hey, wow, that was awesome. It's always something super simple that I come up with
Yeah.
on intuition. I'm like, here, let's try this first, and then it'll come up, and they'll say that's awesome. And what's most rewarding for me in that is that I got to partake in the betterment of somebody else through my hard work, right? Through understanding all these various connections and saying, well, if I take this, that, and the other thing, put it all together, tell you what to do, you get to change your life. Fuck,
Yeah.
that's what we do it all for, right? Is to be able to do that. Um, it's not necessarily the vein that I've been gifted in doing. Mine is much more in like a here's a mentorship role and or like here's what I've explored in writing, because that's my magic is so much in my spiritual practice is so much in writing itself.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's so great that there's so many other avenues, right? We're not pinned to one or two or three when we go down this occult path. There's mentorship, there's writing books, there's performing spells, there's divination, there's so many different aspects that people can really tie into and give back, right? Rather than just the selfish exploits of betterment for yourself. But I think it's really cool. I wonder how you're received by the online community. I imagine, the people you work with, they're like, "Ooh, this is great." But I'm sure that there's plenty of backlash as well online with the Devil's Conjure in general. People getting after you in comments here or there. I'm sure there's some of that. What's that like? I guess battling the trolls, so to speak.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've dealt with some crazy fucking people, honestly. Excuse my French. Over the years, I've actually had like death threats over time, usually via email, of course, because they don't
Tough guy.
they don't approach you, put themselves out there, on. It's usually not on social media where people say that, but even on social media like Facebook, Instagram, usually it's typically bots either way, but usually it's like people who are coming on there they'll say like Jesus is Lord, and I'll say like, and then I'll reply and say Satan is king or something like that, and then they go on, and then it's like a 5,000 character, like, where they're just like blah, 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 saying some kind of crazy thing about some conspiracy theory connected to the devil or Christianity, or dropping like scriptures or something. And I'm like, if practice what you want to, but if you come at me, just know that I'm gonna dish it back. But yeah, I've dealt with some wild trolls over the years. People who were Christian and coming at it like kind of fanatical. People who you could tell they were just bullshitting and kind of wasting their time. But yeah, I've dealt with a lot of wild people, and usually I find that when you start kind of throwing stuff in their like truth in their face, that they kind of disappear really quick, or like the people who would send death threats, like I'll be like, okay, well, I'll be waiting, and just know that like I'm actually going to send like hell to rain upon you and stuff. And then then they actually start going like, oh no, like they start kind of backtracking and stuff. And like, well, I thought your God was more powerful than the devil and all this stuff. And which is funny because Christians do a whole lot more worshiping the devil than they ever do God. They have the devil on their lips far more than they do God. So, but yeah,
It's
I've dealt
funny
with a lot of
too
that.
that, and that's on a side note for all of the listeners. It's actually how Adam and I met. I was playing funny trickster with him in the comments of one of his posts. And I think you actually had posted something about Mark Wahlberg, right?
Yeah, that was funny.
You posted that, and I was like, I just had to get in on it because it was so funny the way that you presented. What is Mark Wahlberg doing with the Jesus from the TV show with the Hallow app?
That was creepy.
And then for for months, it was just me pop into Adam's comments. Oh, that person sure seems like they could use the Hallow app for some prayer.
They need to go pray.
They need to go pray. I wasn't trolling, I promise.
Oh no,
It
that
was
was
too funny
hilarious.
of a joke. It was too funny of a joke, and then we kind of bonded afterwards, talking about it, and then just being able to. It actually cued you into my algorithm and my feed, which allowed me to see so much more of your stuff, which is what
Yeah.
instigated bringing you on the show. So thank you, Mark Wahlberg and
And fake
Fake
Jesus.
Jesus,
Yeah, the
for
guy even
for bringing.
in the commercial, he's even like, just to let you know, I'm not the real Jesus. And we're like, honey, I don't even believe he was real, so we're good either way.
Oh man, it is funny though, the lives that we live online, the life that we live online, and how it impacts us with our practice. I'll have to get used to trolls coming after me if I'm putting myself out here like this. Um, I don't really typically even give them the time of day, so it won't matter much to me. I don't imagine, but just know if you come a knocking, well, we're ready.
Yep.
That's just the way that it is. So let's see. The Devil's Conjure. Tell us about what you're up to there. For those of us that are listening that want to learn more about either how you perform your work. I know you said you have courses, and I know you have some courses. You also have products and services. Tell us, unveil the Devil's Conjure for
Sure.
us.
So, the Devil's Conjure, we basically offer products for the witch and the occultist. So we offer many products between, certain traditions or paths like conjure, folk magic, hoodoo, traditional witchcraft and the occult and occultism and astrological ceremonial magic. So, we started with the first three oils, and so ritual oils have always been kind of what we made our
Mm-hmm.
reputation on when it comes to Devil's Conjure. Essentially, to me, oils are far more than just an infused oil. Like an oil I would have made, or that would make, say, when it comes to like herbalism. There's a lot more that's going on within the actual ritual anointing oil, and typically that consists of months of research, preparation, foraging,
Mm-hmm.
collecting things, certain material like dirts, and resins, and things from like ethical sources and all that fun stuff. But yeah, ritual oils and talismans and charms and mojo hands and specially prepared baths and incense and all that are some of the products that we offer. And to basically aid our clients to exert their own will, to put their own
Mm-hmm.
magic to work. And then for people who don't feel comfortable or are not like a witch or some kind of practitioner, but they legitimately want to transform themselves, their lives, learn magic from one-on-one from a professional sorcerer, or benefit from regular divination. You That's also why I offer the source fire retainer service. So I've offered my services, as like a conjure man, as a sorcerer for a number of years, to clients the world over on kind of every level. But I realized over time that, and I obviously offered, my reading services and stuff, but I realized basically that at some point clients typically need more than just one thing or one spell.
Yeah.
And so, it makes sense, and so that's why we've been offering the retainer for, I think, over 2 years now. Yeah, it makes sense to have something where it's kind of all encompassing. It's an all access pass. You
Mm-hmm.
pay like one flat fee, for 30 days up to 1 year. Clients retain me, and you kind of get all access to me and to my services, and I'm able to, it's more of like a personal, intimate process than like, oh, I did the spell for you, that was it, best of luck. I continue to work with people over this time, kind of involving them, engaging them, performing magic on their behalf, teaching them ways to kind of ground or embody that in their life, or to perform magic successfully for themselves, going forward even after we're no longer working together. So yeah, Devil's Conjure, we offer many, many products, to help you do magic your own, for your own behalf. And then, if you need sort of the help of a professional, you can, certainly book my services via my Sourcefy retainer. So yeah, we kind of have the best of both worlds when it comes to that. There's kind of something for everyone, and really, our products like our best-selling Red Devil Oil, it's something that you don't really need to understand how magic works, or have been a witch for 20 years, or have some specifications or
Hmm.
specialities. You could just take the oil and kind of put it to work or deploy it in whatever way and see results. So that's a big part of it for me, is that I think magic needs to be accessible to everyone. You know, our very nature is to kind of remold our world as we see fit, or utilize magic to shift and change the odds or whatever. And so I love to offer really powerful products that pack a punch, and that's why oils like the Red Double Oil, people kind of call it like a genie in a bottle. So
Mm. I love it. And, it's one of those things. I know that there's a great many people in the community who are anti making money on your magic. I call bullshit more often than not, because historically you see people hiring a sorcerer, like long term
yeah,
kings, noblemen had in their retinue,
sure.
people like such as yourself
Hmm.
to help them navigate through these issues, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that you've designed not only a service that's entirely encompassing, but so many other pieces for the other people that maybe
Hmm.
just want a one-off, right? I don't know how much a one-off is really going to do for any individual, right? As much as
Yeah.
it will be like a whetter of the appetite to say, oh, I
Hmm.
need some more of that, right? I need to see more. And then of course there's the learning the tools yourself. Give a man a fish, he'll eat for one day. Teach a man to fish is a
Yeah.
much deeper process. And even
Hmm.
I'm sure even in the Sorcerer for Hire, you're giving these tools to people who are hopefully absorbing them, not just saying, "Hey, please make another spell for me." I'm
Yeah.
sure the people that come to you that invest in that are learning tools that they can take with them,
Hmm.
and then eventually there's no more need for Adam.
Yeah.
I can do this
Sure.
all myself, and I'm sure that's how you want it to be too.
Yeah, of
You
course.
don't want to be running people's lives for the rest of yours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there are a lot of people, and that's I always like to make a distinction. There are people who want to be the witch and they want to do the magic, and they want to be,
Hmm.
solitary or independent when it comes to that. And then there are people that they don't want to they don't want to be called a witch. They don't want to have any. They want their, as some of my Christian clients like to say, they want their hands to be clean, and which I may feel however I feel about that, but like ultimately, like they're like more than happy to let me do it, and for me to take on whatever karma they're afraid of or whatever, and allow me to kind of do my
Sure.
thing and stuff. So yeah, it's like it's interesting.
I mean, I think if you have an all-seeing deity, they might be seeing what Adam's doing. So
Yeah.
you might be carrying some of that karma yourself.
Right.
I personally don't worry about too much of that. I don't think that there's anything that we have available to us on this plane of reality that
Yeah.
isn't there for a reason. So, like you said, magic is simply a product of being alive, right? It's a product of being here. We're creative naturally,
Hmm.
and and
Yeah.
and and I don't see anything anymore. I mean, I think once long ago I saw things as mundane versus magic, but I can't see anything but pure magic anymore in everything
Yeah.
that's going on. So the distinction is funny to me from that perspective, because to think that I could hire you to keep my hands clean
Yeah.
is just comical, right? But
Yeah.
whatever you need to do to
Yeah.
assuage your conscience and allow the work to happen, it is what has to happen. I have no judgment on
Sure.
that at all. I find it amusing, like
Hmm.
so
Oh
many
yeah.
things now that we get ourselves up. It goes back to what we were talking about, seriousness and playfulness within this. This whole thing is this wonderful tapestry of imagination that we're conjuring out of our own mind and heart. And so to think that it's in any way, shape, or form as serious as we put it out there to be,
Hmm.
um, I think is missing the fun of it all. We get to do this. We have the opportunity to do this, and then even the responsibility, like we talked about that throughout the show, the responsibility to give back. That's fun as fuck too. That's fun. And so, man, I don't want to steal too much more of your time, Adam. In the show notes and in the description, I will, of course, throw the Devil's Conjures website links and all of Adam's links. Please follow him on social media. He's hilarious, fun to interact with. Love this brother right here. I'm so glad to have had you on the show and in the socials too. I'll be sure to tag. And we'll have to bring you on again because I can never get enough. Like even in an hour and a half or whatever it's been, there's always so much more to unpack. And then we'll have to bring you on again just to talk about something else related to sorcery or something that's current.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, thank you, brother.
Thank you for listening to the show today. Please smash that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast most. Share on your favorite platform. And come chat with me over on magic.social, my free occult social media platform, where magic is king, not the algor. What's it them? I want to thank Adam Darkley for joining me in this episode and chatting about his work as a sorcerer and on the topic of sovereignty. If your interest has been piqued, do check out his offerings at the Devil's Conjure. I love his work and can't wait to see how he and other voices in the Vox Occulta continue to shape how the occult reveals itself in our world as we progress boldly into the future. I am Frater O.D., and this is Voces Mysticae.